Welcome to the Love You Sew Patterns YouTube channel. Today we're going to go over the Marie Arena Bag Sew Along. This pattern was initially designed to bring something stylish and give you a different silhouette to bring to any concert or sporting event. But of course you can use this pattern for a cosmetic bag or an everyday bag with some fun printed vinyl. In this sew along, you'll see that we will mostly be featuring this large version of the bag, which has shoulder straps, 2 slip pockets, and that zip closure. But I will also go over the features of the small and the medium bag that also have a crossbody strap and the 2 D-rings attached on the gusset. I love this version for toiletry or cosmetic bags. But before we even get to the sew along, I wanted to show you a quick trick if you have the print at home digital file. You can print out 2 copies of all the pattern pieces and then attach them at the center in order to have one long piece that you don't have to cut on the fold with vinyl. However, if you are like me and do not have enough vinyl and can't get this large gusset out of one roll, you will need to cut 2 pieces. So you'll see I have my pattern piece and I'm adding a 1/4 inch seam allowance in order to sew the 2 pieces together to form one large gusset. I'll show you how to piece these together later in the video. With everything cut and interface, let's take an inventory of our pieces. We have the accent, both the main and the lining pieces. Make sure that your markings are mirrored. You'll see I'm using cotton canvas for the main and then some Essex linen for the lining. Then we have the 2 large body pieces. Then we have the 2 pieces of the large gusset with the seam allowances added in. And with the large, we have the 2 slip pockets. You'll notice that they are clear vinyl so that we can see the pattern come through, and also that there's washi tape to help mark the right side of the pocket. And we can't forget about the zipper tab. Then we have the webbing for the shoulder straps. I will link a video for a regular crossbody strap. Then we have the double fold bias binding. The bias part is very important in order to get a smooth finish around those curves. Then we have our zipper tape cut to length with 1 pull added on. And how cute is this flower pull to match the vinyl I have? And I just wanted to note a couple of my marking instruments. This is a Sew Line mechanical pencil that gives a really sharp white line, and then a Crayola washable marker. I think it's great to use with clear vinyl because it wipes away so easily. And before we get to the instructions in the pattern, I'm going to sew the 2 pieces of the gusset together in order to make the one long piece of gusset. So you'll see that there is a piece of fabric in between. It's like a very light cambric, and it is because this TPU style vinyl is very, very sticky. So I'm using that just to make sure that my alignment is correct. And then we're going to go through and sew the 1/4 inch seam allowance. With vinyl, I always increase my stitch length throughout the entire project. It is about a 3 millimeter here. And then in order to finish this gusset, you'll see that the seam allowance got pushed over to one side in order to try to keep this seam as strong as possible. Then you'll see that I also switched over to a Teflon foot in order to go over the top of the super sticky TPU vinyl, and this is being sewn down with a 1/8 inch top stitch, again with a longer stitch length. Then you can set the gusset aside because now we are going to work on prepping the zipper. The 1/2 inch markings have already been made. I'm just going to define those a little bit more for you to see. Then you will pinch at the marking right side facing up and then pin that angle into place. You can just run a couple of stitches to secure that, but I'm going to show you a little shortcut with a lighter to heat seal these zipper ends together. So everything is still pinned, and then you will take a lighter. I'm using this long one to stay safe, and then these needle nose pliers to help pinch that together. I see a lot of people use their fingers and it is just going to burn your hands because you will have to get the zipper tape to a pretty high temperature in order to melt it. So folks, please use the pliers in order to press down on the melted edges and do not use your bare fingers. Now we're going to go through this whole method with the other side of the zipper, and you can always go back to melt that zipper tape down, and you'll see some of the coil might become unraveled and you just have to snip it right off. Now it's time to work on the zipper tab. You will take your tab, fold it in half, and then fold down each long edge by 1/4 inch. Then you will sew each short side, which was done off camera, and then cut off all of the corners and bulk in order to turn this right side out. Since this tab is pretty small, you're definitely going to need an extra tool to help, and I like to use a sewing gauge just because it's small enough to fit inside, and then there's also a nice right angle to make sure that this tab is as straight as possible. Once everything is to your liking, make sure to press on it with your iron. And if you do not want these little seam allowances sticking out, you can always use a little bit of glue to keep them in place so that they do not show from the outside. Then you take the closed end of the zipper and insert it in front of the seam allowances so that those are all hidden in the back. You can use an awl to just help make sure that the zipper is in straight. Then you can use a little bit of glue just to make sure the tab is on securely and that it is even on both sides of the zipper. Then it's time to edge stitch along the zipper tab, securing it to the zipper itself. You want to make sure that you go through all of the layers of the zipper tab. You can see that I'm using a hump jumper, or it's also called a seam jump, in order to make sure that my zipper foot is nice and level and I'm not going to get any weird skip stitches. Hold on to the zipper because it is time to make the accent. Baste along each long edge of the accent lining and then press the seam allowance wrong sides together. Then grab the accent main right side facing up with the 3/8 inch marking over to your left. Lay your zipper on top with the edges aligned and then mark where that 1 inch marking hits over on the right side. Off camera, I basted in the zipper from marking to marking, and now we're going to add the lining on top. We'll just make sure that all of the markings match up, and you will want to pin these. I like to make sure to actually pin at the markings to make sure that none of my layers shift in between. And then you'll go from the outside edge all the way down to that 1 inch marking. So here we are on the machine. I'm sewing all the way from the short edge, that raw edge, and sewing over the zipper, making sure to be careful over those teeth, and then sewing all the way down to that 1 inch mark. And then at that 1 inch mark, we want to make sure that we double stitch very well and then stop. Then you'll want to lift up your presser foot, unlike what I did here, but since I have such a narrow presser foot, I don't really need to lift it up, and you just want to make sure that zipper is completely out of the way, out of the seam allowance, and then you'll want to continue to sew all the way until the end. Then with the accents, the lining and the main wrong sides together, make sure you press well along that fold and along the zipper seam. To help reduce bulk, always clip the corners in the seam allowance, then take the accent back to the machine to edge stitch all along the zipper. Make sure to repeat steps 12 to 15 with the remaining accents. Now it's time to work on the large body. The body has already been marked, so we are going to go and grab the slip pockets first. Again, the pockets have washi tape to help show the wrong side and the right side of the pockets, but now we're going to add in some bias tape, and I'm using this 1/8 inch double-sided tape, and I like to use the 1/8 inch in order to make sure I basically keep it out of the seam allowance so it doesn't get gunked up. So I attach it to the wrong side of the slip pocket at the very edge and then sandwich the bias tape over top, making sure that the pocket sits right in that crease. Then you'll take it to the machine and sew right along that double folded edge, avoiding the double-sided tape that we had used. And remember, we're going to do this with both pockets, and I'm using the same exact technique in order to attach the binding to the gusset. So basically, I'm skipping up to step 26 in order to get the gusset bound at the same time as the slip pocket. If you are using a different color of binding versus the rest of your bag, this is a great time to kind of combine the steps in order to use the tape and then use the same thread color. Now we're back to step 18 in the instructions. You can see the markings have already been made and they are on the back side so that we'll be able to wipe them away. So with your bound slip pockets, we are going to make sure that the bottom center notches match up. And the nice thing with the vinyl is it kind of like sticks together, so you don't really need pins, but you can also use more washi tape to help keep things in place as well. I know a lot of you are wondering why I didn't use double-sided tape to keep the slip pockets where they're supposed to be, but it's mostly because you can see it on the wrong side of the bag and it's kind of unsightly. So as an alternative, you can also baste the pocket in place because we can remove those later, and having these stitch markings or the stitch holes is not going to compromise the integrity of the bag later. And now, while the webbing was staring at me on the work table, I decided to prep it at this point. So I'm taking the webbing and cutting it in half, and then with each raw edge, I am using my lighter to heat seal it. You can see that this is a cotton poly blend by the way that it melts down. So just allow it a little bit of time to cool down, and then use your fingers or those pliers to help press down those edges. Now it's time to attach the body to the accents, and then off camera I had basted the bottom edge of the slip pocket to the body. With the right side of the body facing up, I'm matching the right side of the accent to it, and then clipping all of the pieces together and sewing only through the body and the accent main. Again, that seam was done off camera. You want to make sure to press the seam allowance with your fingers, since we're working with vinyl, up toward the zipper. Now you can see why we needed to baste a seam allowance into the lining. This is what is going to give us the clean finish in the end. You can use glue to put down on the seam allowance in order to attach the lining, or again, we can use the 1/8 inch double-sided tape. Again, I'm attaching it to the very top edge of the vinyl in order to keep it out of my sewing seam when it's time to top stitch this later on. To make sure that the lining is even, you want to make sure to work from the center out toward the outside of the body. And you just want to make sure that those folded edges are completely aligned so we have a nice top stitch that will catch all of the layers. Then with the accent main right side facing up, you want to sew along that edge in order to attach all of the layers together. Again, this was done off camera because it is just a straight seam. Then it's time to remove those basting stitches from the accent lining. The tip in the instruction states to use a contrasting thread because then it is so much easier to remove when you have that contrast. Now it's time to add the handles on to this first side. You want to grab one of your handles and then align it to the outside of the markings you made. Now it is hard to not be able to pin, so I like to pin wherever I can. So that is through the accent, and then be able to open up the zipper and clip everywhere else. Make sure that your webbing is not twist it in any way, and then continue to align it to the outside of your markings and add in all the clips as needed in order to keep everything in place and use those pins where you only have fabric. Now I'm using my marking instrument to create the X boxes where I'm going to sew for a very secure stitch. If you want to add a rivet or two at the top of the handle, just wait until you sew all of the handles down first. If you're nervous about these handles shifting, you can again use more washi or masking tape to keep it all in place as you sew. Then I like to work from the bottom of the handle up, using a 1/16 inch seam allowance just to edge stitch here, and you can either lift the washi tape as you go, or you can actually sew right through it. You can see that I'm kind of working with a little bit of the stickiness from the vinyl, so I'm using that cambric fabric again underneath to help it slide on my sewing machine bed much more easily. I love being able to see the vinyl and then my markings as I go to make sure that these straps are nice and straight. Now with the right side of the handle, I wanted to show you how you can actually sew straight through the washi tape. Since I have a longer stitch length, it makes removal of the washi tape so easy. So if you feel more secure with that in order to keep your straps straight, go for it. Then repeat adding the body and the handle to the other side of your bag. If you decided to baste the slip pockets into place, this is your chance to remove the basting stitches. Just make sure not to remove any of the handle stitches at the same time. Then with a damp cloth, you can remove all of the markings on the back of the body. That's it for part 1 of the Marie Arena bag sew along. Head to part 2 where we will work on the gusset and finish up the entire bag.